Now, after 5 years of construction, continuing its track to Lhasa has made this station more of a pass-by site. With many of the main environmental treatment centers homed here, this station is used as a maintenance destination and to reload supplies. The train only stops for about 10 minutes before it continues its journey to the mountain tops. Here, we caught a train coming through from Beijing to Lhasa. For us tourists, it's very convenient to ride the top of the world. We catch a train, we look out the window, we end up in Lhasa. Ni hao. As I board the train to the roof of the world at the Gurmu train station, I'm excited to see the once secret sights of these mountains. We will safely be reaching unthinkable altitudes and witnessing the mystery of this untouched land from the peaks. The train will take us through famous spots, such as the Kukha Shali, where we hope to find herds of Tibetan antelope, past the Tuotuoha River, and up over the Kunlun mountain pass, standing at an amazing altitude of over 5,000 meters. There are majestic snowy mountains, beautiful sacred lakes, the mystical source of the 3 big rivers, and the bluest heavenly skies above. From the comfort of our cozy compartments, we will witness the beauty of these desolate Himalayan mountains. As I walk through the train, I see the passengers are relaxed and enjoying themselves, despite the high altitudes. The train offers all the comforts needed for a long ride through the mountains. The passenger trains are equipped to make the journey as comfortable as possible, offering 3 different classes of varying comforts. The speed of the train can reach up to 100 kilometers per hour on frozen terrain tracks. On non-frozen terrain, it'll reach about 120 kilometers per hour. This makes the speed of the train quite efficient, considering the difficult terrain. 'We've just passed the Tuotuoha Bridge, located at the mouth of the Yangtze River. The Yangtze River is the longest river in China and is one of the main water sources for southern China. The highest altitude we reach here is 4,696 meters above sea level, where we find amazing snow-capped mountains and the bluest skies.
对，第一次进藏，
是不是比较兴奋？现在看到
对啊，看到藏羚羊比较兴奋。
那你
有一个刚好拍到了。
It's very nice, and also the animals like yak, like antelopes, like and the snow under the mountain. It's very nice. It's very nice mountain.
青藏铁路对我来讲是一个很新兴的铁路，这个工程浩大，不简单。
It's very comfortable. I guess I was surprised because we were expecting some problem maybe because of the altitude, but I must say the train is constructed and organized so that the tourists, at least our type of tourists, feel comfortable. So it's really very nice, and you could sleep quite well. So
it's a wonderful project. It's something which is, for me, it's a very important challenge to have built such a railway stations at this altitude for workers, for everything, the logistic, the material. It's impressive.
After 14 hours of riding the train from Gurmu to here Lhasa, I'm finally happy to arrive at the train station. What a spectacular journey that was. We saw snow-capped mountains, we saw rain, we saw sunshine, blue sky. It was wonderful, but I'm happy to be in Lhasa. I'm happy to see the Potala Palace, and I'm happy to go find my hotel. See you there. Passengers coming off this train each have their own purpose for the visit. With an incredible increase in tourism, we find not only more curious foreign faces, but also many more monks and lamas from other parts of China, Nepal, and India. The railway has made it more accessible for them to reach the Holy Land.
It's really nice. Yeah. I think it's very multicultural. Like, I didn't expect to see so many different races here. Like, there was a whole section, I went walking today, there was a whole section of Muslims, which I really didn't expect to find here in Lhasa. And there's lots of Nepalese and Indians.
I feel interested because Lhasa is quite amazing because all the monastery and also a lot of different people from different countries.
I have to say it's pretty nice. I didn't saw only Lhasa up to now, so let's see. But it is famous in the world, so I think we will see quite a lot nice things here.
青藏铁路开通以后，不用说，整个拉萨、整个西藏都有了很大的变化。当然，大昭寺也是在这个里面有了很大的变化。比如说，从那个游客的人次来讲的话，比往年，也就是青藏铁路开通之前多了，可以说翻了几倍的那种样子。现在我们这边的话，平均人次应该都在2700-800人次。往年青藏铁路开通之前，平均都在1000或者700-800这种样子。为什么呢？因为我们已经尝到了这个，就是说它的优越的一种性质，所以我们也希望这种优越的这种，就是说性质能带到我们藏区的各个角落、各个地方，能给就是说这个青藏铁路这个铁路呢，能给我们全西藏的人民带来一个幸福。
Next, we head to Linzhi in the southeast of Tibet, where the altitude is 3,000 meters, much lower. At this milder climate, we find very unique greenery. The land here is nurtured by the Niyang River, a branch of the Yaluzangpu. The scenery is beyond the imagination of anyone who's not seen it. Forests, rich vegetation, and small villages nestled among the snow-capped mountains. This is the rich southern Tibet. A holy lake, Ba Song Cuo, is also found here, whose waters give a reflection as good as any mirrors. Legend has it that two young lovers who are unable to be together in life dived into the lake, and in doing so, made it even more beautiful. The area is also famous for its picturesque communities. I decided to visit Walnut Village, so named because of the walnut trees that surround it. It's just the place to get a glimpse of what Tibetan life is really like.
I guess we've seen many types of prayer wheels. Those that are spun by the hand, those that are spun by the wind, and now we see one that is spun by water power. Wow. Each time it spins, it's like reading the scriptures.
Spinning the prayer wheel is believed to spread spiritual blessing and well-being. But there are many different ways of doing so. Water is also used to power the local barley mill to make the staple food here, zamba. After the barley is ground into very fine flour, it's mixed with a little tea and then rolled up into small lumps and eaten with the fingers. This crop is as important to them as rice and bread to us. The high mountains combined with deep valleys and cold temperatures makes transportation inside Tibet particularly difficult. On the plateau, people ride on sure-footed yaks. On the waters, they ride in boats made of animal hide. Anyway, in Tibet, there's what you might call a strong yak culture.
上船了，师傅。So here comes my taxi. 就站着吗？ And look, a special seat for me too. 走吧。Whoa. 中间。You see, this traditional means of transportation along the water is what Tibetans mostly use to cross streams like this one and even the grand rivers. It's hard to believe that something made of wood and just cow's hide, 100% natural, can hold something like myself down the water. And you can't really buckle up here, so you gotta hold on tight and live life like a real Tibetan.
Variety of its landscape and diversity of its peoples. Welcome to Travelog's Ethnic Minority Special. If you think about the minority of China, perhaps the most mysterious of all are the Tibetans. And that's why today we are in Tibet. And this place right now is actually the birthplace of Tibetan culture. These mountains, this plateau, everything around me is where it all happened originally. So get ready for the adventure of a lifetime. Welcome to Travelog, I'm Yin. For most people, a journey to the Tibet Autonomous Region is a fantasy, something beyond their reach. For others, it's a lifelong dream that may just come true. And yet for others, it's a mission that defines their very existence. We'll be drifting downstream on the Yalong River from the birthplace of Tibetan civilization, Shannan, as far as Linzhi, and onwards to the heart of Tibet, the capital Lhasa. On our journey, we're accompanied by tourists and Buddhists. Tibet, with its average altitude of 4,000 meters, is called the roof of the world. Everyone who travels here has their own unique reasons for doing so, from exploring the unknown to attaining enlightenment. Religion is the foundation of Tibetan culture. Buddhism first came to the region during the reign of Songtsen Gampo in the 7th century. In the Tubo Kingdom, he laid the foundation for Buddhism by importing scriptures and building monasteries. His other great achievement was to cement the ties between Han and Tibetan peoples, which he did by marrying the Tang Dynasty princess, Princess Wencheng. Today, Tibetans live in a land where past and present merge. From traditional yak butter tea to international fare, religious paintings to postmodern art, it's a bizarre mix unlike any other. But one thing that's unchanged is the spirit of the people. In Shannan, the birthplace of ancient Tibetan culture, there stands the first palace built by the first Tibetan king. That was in the 2nd century. The Yongbalakan Palace is the oldest surviving example of Tibetan architecture.
Wow. Look at the crops over here. These were where the first Tibetans settled over 2,000 years ago. And you see, it's believed that they came here, had a Tibetan king, and built their first palace. Maybe that's why this area is so sacred.
Legend has it that the original ancestors of the Tibetans were a sacred monkey and a mortal woman. Over the centuries, their descendants multiplied and formed a tribe and turned the valley into agricultural land. After the first king descended to earth from the heavens, he was followed a little later by the first sacred text, which fell on the roof of his palace. Buddhism made its way into Tibet from India, and the central figure is Sakyamuni, the founder. Still today, a sign of devotion among Buddhists is to recite the sutras, spin prayer wheels, and offer yak butter lamp for the oil lamps. The Yongbalakan Palace, geometric in shape, was the model based on which many other structures were later built. There's something magical about the towering place, perched on the mountain beneath the clouds and brilliant sun. Indescribable. Tibetans live in compact communities on this plateau, making up 95% of the population. The natural environment is harsh, temperatures are cold, and oxygen is deficient. But for these farmers and herdsmen, the most important crop is barley and their agricultural lifestyle. This site, covering almost 4 million square meters, is the celebrated tomb of Tibetan kings. Among those buried here are Songtsen Gampo himself, along with his wives and concubines. The tombs are flat on the top and piled with earth and rocks. Tibetans live in an area with an extensive river system and vast lakes. Naturally, they have learned to use these waterways as a means of transport. By tradition, small boats made of animal hide were used to cross those rivers. Although today's boats are a bit more sophisticated, the journey is no less difficult. Samye Monastery, built in the 8th century, was the first monastery in Tibet. It was commissioned by an Indian Buddhist master and combines elements of Han, Tibetan, and Indian architecture, and thus it's called the Three-Style Temple. It's one of the most popular destinations for pilgrims, some of whom travel on foot for weeks to reach it. Ground floor is Tibetan, middle floor is Han, and the top is in Indian style.
Samye Monastery is particularly famous, mostly because of its grand scale and also its position as the oldest and earliest monastery containing all three religions. And you see, the name in English sort of translates into the unimaginable monastery. And that's because when it was first being built, it was unimaginable how huge this place was. And also, after it was being slowly constructed, it was being taken down by the demons every night. But somehow, miraculously, it still came to be what it is today.
An air of mystery surrounds Samye Monastery, enhanced by its grandiose and complex design. It's supposed to replicate the universe as described in the sutras. 4 towers, each of different color, stand at the 4 angles of the main temple. They symbolize the 4 heavenly kings, who are said to protect and bless the monastery. The monastery's interior is large and colorful. It's a place where many monks come to study. But there's one room we're not allowed to see. It's where monks of the highest standing spend 3 years studying the scriptures, and they don't come out until their time is up. Food is delivered to them regularly. Here, the wall paintings are most informative. For instance, this one displays the rules of the monastery. They're quite particular about the types of shoes allowed inside, also the type of kettle used for carrying the water, and the rules for praying. A daily ritual for monks is debating the Buddhist scriptures. It's a way for the novices to learn. The debate also serves as a test by which a ranking can be drawn up of how much the monks have mastered the rules of the Buddha.
It's the beginning of a brand new day today in Tibet. And you see, many people call this place the roof of the world. And why not, with an average height of over 4,000 meters above sea level. And they always say you get the best view from above. Let's see how these Tibetans live their lives. I'm Yin, and welcome to Travelogue.
Tibet is a mysterious land, and its capital, Lhasa, is its spiritual center. Lhasa in Tibet means place of gods, and indeed, it has been a destination for Buddhist pilgrims for centuries. People from far and wide journey to the center of Old Lhasa, its heart, the Shoton Monastery. The monastery was constructed by the Tubor king Songtsen Gampo in the 7th century, and has been the oldest temple in Tibet. When Songtsen Gampo married a Nepalese princess and later a Chinese princess, Princess Wencheng, they both brought sculptures of Sakyamuni, the founder of Buddhism. The king then ordered the Shoton Monastery to be built to house these holy sculptures. Nearly all Tibetans follow Tibetan Buddhism, known as Lamism. Buddhism was introduced into Tibet in the 7th century from India. Today, the power of religion still runs strong, and people gather outside the monastery every morning to prostrate at the main gate. By doing so, it's believed they collect good merit for the next life. I have never seen more devout peoples anywhere in the world. The Jokung Monastery can claim to be the center around which the city of Lhasa developed. With the growing number of people circling the monastery, prostrating themselves, the most representative Barkor Street was formed. Today, Tibetan people still follow this custom, moving clockwise around the monastery every dawn and dusk. It appears the street still whispers the stories of old Tibet. Nowadays, Barkor Street is also a hive of market activity in which visitors can buy all sorts of souvenirs.
See, this piece of cloth is a typical costume for what the local ladies wear. And you see, I got one myself here. It's double layers, red on the inside and blue on the outside. And it's things like this that keep you cool in the summertime and warm in the winter. Look at the embroiders.
Most items on the street relate to the religion, since religion plays a role in most aspects of Tibetan culture. Thangkas are the richest forms of Buddhist art. Thangka is a kind of scroll painting mounted on fabric that depicts a wide range of themes taken from Tibetan history, social life, and traditional culture. The main theme of Thangka is religion, and portraits of Buddhas and religious scenes are common.
Contemporary Tibetan art. Wonder what that looks like.
The Lhasa of today is a blend of past and present. Art has taken on a new face in art galleries on Barkor Street. Contemporary art includes traditional religious themes blended with abstract or postmodern ways in presentation. Art in Tibet. What does that exactly mean? Well, typically people will think of the thangkas or the murals that are on top of the monasteries and the rooms and the walls. But nowadays, you see painting in Lhasa has taken almost a different type of turn. There's many different faces to it. And around me now is a perfect example of what's modern here in Lhasa. You see, instead of just the two-dimensional, very brightly colored pictures of Buddhas or things from the scriptures, now you still have sometimes the same content, but it's displayed in a completely different way. For a taste of local culture, you gotta try local foods.
On this section of Baiju Street, there's all these daily food items that the locals eat. Like, see over here? This is sort of dried yak butter. And over here is shredded. All different shapes and different widths and everything. And I guess the people here like to have their yak butter in all different forms, with their foods, with their yak butter tea, and everything else.
Most Tibetans still prefer to eat traditional foods, and the Madhyami restaurant on the street can be just that place for you. It's a fine place for a good view of the city as well. You haven't been to Tibet if you haven't seen the Potala Palace. In stories and legends, we have heard of the holiness and mystery of Tibet, and perhaps it stems from this ancient palace. Its crimson and white wall and its golden roof shine in glory in the famous sunlight of Lhasa. structure of Tibet is, of course, Potala Palace. And you see, millions of people come here every year to witness its grandeur. It stands over 110 meters in height and has over 1,000 rooms. Formerly used as government offices, now it's mostly admired as a religious and historical center. In 641, Songtsen Gampo, ruler of the Tubo Kingdom, had the Potala Palace built for Princess Wencheng of the Tang Dynasty, who he was soon to marry. The complex is made up of two sections, the Red Palace and the White Palace, which together consists of 1,000 rooms. It's a model of Tibetan architecture and a major national cultural monument. This world's highest palace stands more than 3,700 meters above sea level and has 13 stories with 999 rooms. You see, the Potala Palace is composed mostly of two colors, red and white. Now, of course, they're symbolic. The red symbolizes power, and the white symbolizes peace and tranquility, just like the palace. Much remains veiled to the visitor, like the stupa of the 5th Dalai Lama, who rebuilt the palace after it was damaged by lightning and warfare. At 14 meters high, the stupa has over 3,700 kilograms of gold. The designs and decorations are all inlaid with diamonds and pearls, as well as other precious items. The White Palace, comprising halls, temples, and courtyards, serves as the living quarters of the Dalai Lama. The Red Palace includes various chambers for worshipping Buddha and chambers housing the 8 stupa that contain the remains of 5th through 13th Dalai Lama. The Potala Palace is a historical monument, but still preserves a special place in people's hearts today. Devout Tibetans pilgrimage here by vehicle, by motorbike, by foot, and even on hands and knees. Slowly, the first glimmer of light smiles upon the land, and on a city with more than 1,400 years of history. Songtsen Gampo moved his capital to Lhasa from Shannan in the 7th century. According to historical records, he built the city specially for the Tang Dynasty princess he married. For her part, she brought a statue of Sakyamuni to Lhasa with her, and the Shoton Monastery was built to house it. This effectively made the monastery the heart of the city. Today, it's still its spiritual center. But now, near Drepung Monastery, we are soon enveloped in mulberry smoke, as well as the sound of horns and of scriptures being recited. A group of lamas, over 100 of them, are pulling the 30-meter painting up to the platform. Originally, the festival was purely religious. Monks would spend weeks in retreat. When they emerged, it was the custom for commoners to give them yogurt. Hence the festival's name, Shoton, meaning yogurt. And so, the giant picture of Sakyamuni, the founder of Buddhism, is revealed. In the afternoon, the activities move to Lobulinka. Tibetans are traditionally a nomadic and herding people, and thus many families will camp out here for a few days, getting back to their roots. The families sing songs that tell stories of their past. And on this festive occasion, Tibetans dressed in their best will gather together and watch a Tibetan opera, which is based on Buddhist teachings and Tibetan history. It's so important to their culture that the name for Shoton Festival is also Tibetan Opera Festival. The performances last for about a week during the holidays. Tibetan opera dates back 1,400 years, almost the dawn of Tibetan civilization. For many people, a visit to Tibet is meaningless without two things: the Potala Palace and Mount Everest. And here, we meet some seemingly common folk who have some big dreams. And this is Mount Everest, the highest peak in the entire world. Once the North and South Poles had been reached by explorers, Mount Everest was their next challenge, often called the Third Pole. Attempts to climb the mountain began the first half of the 20th century. One man, George Mallory, was one of them who dared to challenge it. When asked, "Why do you climb the mountain?" he said, "Because it is there." Unfortunately, he didn't come back from Everest. It was the last time Mallory was observed. From Lhasa, we continue west to Jiangzi of Rikaze district, which means the fertile land in Tibetan. The sights along the way are spectacular. Here the environment is harsh and at a challenging high-altitude natural environment. However, there are the small villages that dot the landscape and manage to catch our eye. What a crazy journey! So far we've been past mountains and grasses and flowers and deserts, and the weather's been changing all over the place. You got sunny weather, you got clouds, wind, even we passed through a sandstorm. So I wonder what Rikaze would actually be like once we get there, but we'll have to be bouncing for a few more hours over this multivaried scenery before we get there. Have to wait. Here we find the famous mountain Zongshan. It was once the location of the local government of Jiangzi County and has a group of castles located on a hill in the urban area. Jiangzi is well known as Hero Town because of the Tibetan soldiers and people who once took part in a fierce battle to defend it. Fort Ruin of resisting British Army is located on that mountain. It used to be an ancient castle where the Tibetans fought against the British Army's invasion a century ago. China is a country of 56 minorities, but they are all united and at peace. Outside is Baiju Monastery. It's a charming place which remains its special culture and natural remoteness. The monastery was built in the 15th century and is the headquarters for 3 sects of Buddhism, which had experienced rivalry for a long period of time. The monastery is the only one known to house monks from different orders in harmony. As a result, its structural style, deities enshrined, and murals are very unique. It's also unique in combining stupa and temple, with temples in stupa and stupas in temples. Deemed as the symbol of the monastery, the spectacular Kumbum stupa consists of hundreds of chapels and layers, housing about 100,000 images of various icons. The wealth of murals are all beautifully painted in different styles.
Today, this is all that remains of Guge. Its capital city, Saparang. The grand vision of the first kings of Guge is reflected in this extraordinary city, literally carved into the side of a mountain. Soaring to the heavens, the height of a modern 80-story skyscraper. It is even today one of the largest structures in Tibet. Along its narrow lanes, you can almost hear the echoes of the many people who toil to gouge a city from this impenetrable mount of clay. A labyrinth of tunnels and stairs leads vertically 300 meters to the very top of the structure. The view is breathtaking. But this is only a small part of the once mighty kingdom of Guge. At its height, it was twice the size of Great Britain. Experts believe that somewhere here lies the answer to one of the most intriguing archaeological enigmas in Asia. Who exactly built this extraordinary structure? And what could have possibly led to the downfall of this civilization? In its day, Guge was the Florence of the East. At a time when Genghis Khan's Mongols were advancing into Central Asia and Europe, and the Crusades were being fought in Palestine, Guge was a flourishing center of commerce, art, religion, and political power. It dominated a strategic crossroads on the Silk Road between Central Asia and China, a crossroads for the numerous caravans trading gold, silk, wool, and spices. Guge was the center of sophisticated art and ideas, a magnet for artisans and intellectuals. It was at the heart of a religious renaissance, and home to some of the greatest Buddhist thinkers of its time. Yet having prospered for 7 centuries, this magnificent kingdom disappeared in 1630, leaving only an enigmatic structure, the very last remaining clue to a lost civilization. These are the first ever photographs of the Guge kingdom. They were captured in 1933 by Italian explorer Giuseppe Tucci. In them, we see the remains of what was once a vibrant civilization. Tucci was the first Westerner to document these magnificent ruins. When his guides first showed him the capital city of Saparang, Tucci was awestruck by what lay before him. He wrote, "In front of us, the whole hillside is covered with tremendous ruins. A dead city, which seems to be keeping vigil over a tormented waste of stone." Tucci's visit to the ruins of Guge unearthed no clues to its demise. The kingdom of Guge occupied the arid western arm of Tibet. Saparang is a 5-day drive west of the Tibetan capital of Lhasa. It is an arduous journey across unpaved roads in some of the least inhabited and harshest landscapes on the planet. The hardship and harshness of nature has forged a unique spirit in the people who live here. Within this nearly inaccessible structure are clues that hint at what life in Guge must have been like. This is the Red Temple. Behind these ancient doors, some of Buddhism's finest murals tell a story of one of the greatest civilizations in Asia, one that in its heyday was unsurpassed across the Himalayas. These murals document life in Guge and present a pictorial history of this once great kingdom.
The murals of Guge are simply stunning. Not only is it great artwork, but they encapsulate the experience of the kingdom, its culture, its peoples, its society, the ways in which they did business, the ways in which they moved about and traded. These are all represented in the mural. This is not merely artwork, this is history in visual form.
Over the centuries, Tibet and its people have seen great upheavals. It began as a unified empire. Then around the year 850, the empire fell apart after a series of brutal civil wars. What emerged from the battles and the bloodshed was a separate kingdom, Guge. Separang lay amidst a vast and arid desert. In order to guarantee Guge's survival, the king was forced to spend much of his resources transporting water to the city and to the farms that it depended on. The ancient irrigation canals, wells, and even a 20-kilometer-long aqueduct stretching from the Sutlej River to the citadel can still be seen amidst the ruins. Evidence of the massive undertakings to keep this oasis alive. With their power and livelihood secure, the royals proceeded to live a life full of absolute opulence. Amazingly well-preserved, centuries-old murals speak of this religious convention, a spiritual gathering which planted the first seeds from which Tibetan Buddhism was reborn. From that point onward, Guge became the spiritual and cultural heart of Tibetan Buddhism. Today, Buddhism is still an integral part of everyday life in Tibet. It is an ancestral gift that permeates all levels of society, influencing every aspect of the Tibetan's life. Tibetans still flock to Guge even today, not so much for the temples as for the wondrous peak towering over Separang, the sacred Mount Kailash.